Hello and welcome to part one of Go Further with Microsoft Lists. We're focused in this part one on creating and collaboration with lists and how they work within Microsoft Teams. My name is Mark Cashman and I'm a senior product manager at Microsoft, and I focus on Microsoft Lists, and historically I come from the SharePoint product marketing team, so I bring a lot of that value in where lists got started in SharePoint. I'll be very clear about all of that, but I think with getting started with Microsoft Lists, we'll do just that. We'll get started. We're breaking out this on-demand workshop into two parts. We are now in part one, module one, creating and collaborating. So we're going to focus really answering that question. What is Microsoft List? We'll give you a nice introduction and hopefully breeze through all the common questions that you have. Then we'll focus on what it's like to create a list and how you can do that in a number of different ways, including using the ready-made templates. And then we'll focus on working with lists inside of Microsoft Teams using the new Lists app in Teams. Module 2 focuses on really taking you to the next level of how you can make lists work for you. And that really focuses on customizations with views, formatting, and rules. We'll talk about the relationship and the integration that we have with the Power Platform. And then we'll focus on our most currently released roadmap information, common resources, and again, additional Q&A, answering some of those broader adoption and usage questions. The first thing that I like to do when somebody asks me what is Microsoft Lists is I like to put it at least in the category when you think of the breadth of Microsoft 365. And if you think around the breadth of Office 365, it is where all of this lands. And we think about it from a collaborative work management. You work on a lot of projects, a lot of products, or a lot of campaigns, or you're just tracking a lot of information across a number of different content types, things like tracking tasks, working and co-authoring on documents, or just managing information, especially as things change. So starting with to-do is very much focused on individual tasks or tasks that get explicitly assigned to you. And if you think about that as a tool to track everything that you need to get done, it's a great tool for that. Once it gets done, it's out of your view, and you see then what's your work item, and you can set and schedule your day. Planner, we really look at how does your team work together in assigning tasks and getting certain products and projects and campaigns completed by nature of assigning and tracking tasks. Once a task is completed, again, it's out of view. And as an individual, if you get assigned a task, it would appear in To-Do. There's a pivot for assigned tasks in To-Do. Taking both of those, if you're working more and more these days in Microsoft Teams, there's a new app called Tasks in Teams, which is an aggregate of all the things that you do as an individual and all the things that you're doing across your team. And if you, of course, are a part of multiple teams, virtual or hierarchical, you will see all of those tasks in one place inside of Teams. Where we start to stretch the boundaries of tracking information more than tasks is you start to see how you can track different types of information like issues, tracking physical assets, or if you're an event manager internally or you're getting ready for a broader event externally, managing all that information, managing your speakers, managing devices, managing physical assets, maybe like a fleet of trucks, starts to use lists in a way that you can leverage, because you'll probably have a custom way that you track information, a custom business process you may want to tie to, and of course you're tracking lots of different types of information. So if we then turn to the Office integration, for us it's a hugely important offering in terms of giving you the best access to work with documents, especially when you work with others. And in the context of Microsoft Teams or SharePoint, SharePoint is where the technology is stored, your documents, and a lot of the collaboration now is in Microsoft Teams. So if you move everything from the left-hand side into the right of what does this all mean within the hub for teamwork, Microsoft Teams, this is where a lot of people are collaborating, and we want to bring great first-party experiences across all these applications to really hone in and focus on what are the different scenarios. Are you managing tasks? Are you managing files? Are you working with broader sets of information? All of that is now capable within Microsoft Teams. And of course, for this session, and as we get into the specific module around lists and teams, we really want to focus on answering that question. What role does list play in the collaborative work management offering as you work with and collaborate with other people inside of Microsoft 365? Answering that question, what is Microsoft Lists? It is a tool within Microsoft 365 to help you track information in a smart way. We've done a lot of work to make this simple so that as you're wanting to add information, create a new list, track it, and work with others, a lot of those deeper level capabilities that might have been multiple clicks or training in and of itself in how to do it, we've tried to simplify that. So the barrier to entry is much more low with Microsoft Lists compared to past of SharePoint lists. We've added some new capabilities to add some smarts. We have both in how you can visualize your list with formatting. We have the ability to add rules to make sure that people are notified and brought into your list, especially if they're not working on it day to day. It's very easy to include others, and you can do that in a very smart way. And there's a lot of flexibility, and this is where it's a great differentiator in terms of that broader portfolio for Microsoft. But it's also one that we add where the flexibility that's there is still the same level of skill set. So enhancing what your view or your formatting looks like is now just one or two clicks with some decision points. Or building out rules are certainly easy. It's like building out a sentence structure, if this, then that type of approach. And on the higher end scale, we have deep integration with the Power Platform to do things like custom forms, custom workflows, and even recently announced custom visualizations through Power BI. We will cover all of this both in this part 1 and in part 2. But again, this part 1 is really to focus on answering that question, what is Microsoft Lists? So I thought I'd spend a little time on answering our frequently asked questions, and this is what I've been tracking for the first number of months of once we've released Microsoft Lists. Now that it's out there, these might not be quite as frequent, but we still get them and I wanted to cover them. First, Microsoft Lists is an evolution of SharePoint lists, which means we're using the same platform, we're using the same infrastructure, and we're adding capabilities for how you enter into lists, meaning that you can create a list for Microsoft Teams just as easily as you can still create a Microsoft list or a list within SharePoint. Multiple entry points, same platform. The other key point here is if you have a lot of existing lists and you think of them as SharePoint lists, there is no need to migrate them. There is no need to update them, upgrade them. They will just get new features and have all the same capabilities that I will show you when we get to demo. We covered a lot of how do the task app like To-Do and Planner work alongside lists, but one of the common questions we get is Microsoft Lists yet another task app? And the answer that I like to give is no. There's a lot more that you can do with lists, not to minimize what you can do with a task app, but they're very oriented around a simple set of information and very date-driven and a person assigned to it. That's a task. Once it's done, it's out of view. It's not deleted, but it commonly is out of view and something you don't turn back to. With lists, these are more customizable and flexible, and they can be tied to a business process. And the holistic thing is with lists information, it's commonly information that you track month over month, year over year, and maybe something like a status changes or a variety of people may come in contact with the information and then maybe move away from it. All the while you're able to keep it up to date and involve those people in an easy way, managing the information, but again, in an ongoing fashion. We have a new capability within Microsoft Lists called personal lists. And personal lists are very similar to how we think of OneDrive for your personal work files. This is a space in Microsoft 365. It is your personal storage for your personal lists. The thing that's different is you can create a list for yourself and maybe share it with one or two people, but it's not necessarily a part of a team space. So you have control, you're the owner until you share that list. From an IT perspective, it is something you can manage. So if you don't want people creating personal lists, you can turn it off. And you can turn it off for specific individuals if that's a more appropriate way for your business to run. When a lot of people ask, is Microsoft Lists available to me? Do I have it? I've purchased Office 365 in a certain way. Should I have lists? And the answer almost 100% now is yes. No matter whether you're an enterprise customer, an education customer, or you're one of our government cloud customers, lists are a part of the level of SharePoint from a SKU or a license perspective. So the answer is yes, you have it. And from a rollout perspective, we are now at 100% worldwide rollout across all of these plans. And that's both web and now inclusive of our specific lists for iOS app, which is now in the App Store. So if you have interest in lists, if you want to try it during this training or shortly after, there shouldn't be anything blocking you. If you're an Office 365 customer, you're licensed for SharePoint, you'll be able to access lists, and you'll see exactly how to do that in the very first demo. I also want to indicate that we are working on a version for Android, and that should be available later in 2021. When you think of some of the new capabilities, I mentioned that we have this ability to have a flexible list. So if you add rules, that's one of the new capabilities within Microsoft Lists. We like to be really clear, the base level rules that are the default experience in lists are not based on Power Automate. That being said, if you have the need for higher end or more complex workflows, we do have integrations with Power Automate, so of course you can still build out those workflows. But if you're using rules in lists, that is not something that requires the Power Platform. One last thing, we have a new capability with comments in lists, and we have now the ability coming soon to be able to @mention somebody, but anything that happens in the comments within the list is actually stored in the same list container, which for us is SharePoint, and it's within that individual list in the same list schema. What it really means is it's not available to everybody. It follows the same permissions as you would expect any information based on where you put it and who has access to it. And it's not available for the Microsoft search engine to index comments. So comments are private to the group that's working on the list, and private from a broader search perspective. Again, more of an IT question, but certainly point of clarity when we think of comments being a specific new component of lists. They are private and not shared or crawled by Microsoft Search. So hopefully if we cleared out your common FAQs, we can really get into what does the product feel like. And it all starts with creating a list and leveraging some of the new technology that we have with ready-made templates. So I want to cover what that looks like and what you get when you create a personal list versus a Teams-based list. And you can create a list from scratch. You can bring in data from Excel. You can use the smarts of another list, which really helps if you think around how you've customized one list. You can benefit from doing the exact same thing on the next list with a lot less getting started work. We'll cover what it looks like to use the new ready-made templates in some of the scenarios. I think sometimes seeing the templates for the first time also helps ground the what can I do with lists. They're like mini scenarios in themselves, but there's also just a quick way to get started so it saves you time creating your lists. And then we'll talk about sharing. So getting started is super easy. In Office 365, in the app launcher, you'll see me in demo, go directly into lists. And what you see here on this slide is the list home experience. You can create a list from here, you can see your favorited lists, and of course you can track and access and jump from list to list from one's place. So I mentioned that we have a couple of entry points, some which are very new. This list home is very new, and the new lists app in Teams is very new. And I have a whole section to cover on what that experience looks like. But we are carrying forward to be able to create lists in team sites, whether they're connected to a team in Teams or not. So think about using lists for tracking issues, managing assets, tracking activities. Those could be social activities, those could be event-driven, and then making them work for you by leveraging filter capability, views on lists so that one list can work in a number of different ways across a number of different people, depending on how they're leveraging the list. And there's a lot that you can do around color formatting at the row level or at the common level to make things really pop, to call to your attention things that have changed or are indicative of certain ways that you describe your information. So with the ready-made templates, this is just a view of where we're getting started. We're starting with 8 ready-made templates with 3 additional ones when you're working in Microsoft Teams. And one of the things we recently announced is coming soon the ability to build out your own custom list templates. But if you look at some of the names, we've tried to be real descriptive in how we describe these templates. They are self-explanatory, I hope. But if you review the list in the middle gray box, I'll call out just 3 of them and give you an indication of what is a template. With the issue tracker, this really brings issues to close, where you can set priorities and automatically send notifications based on how the list is managed when you make changes. But it's a great way for tracking issues, especially for people maybe out in the field or on site tracking, changing the list information, triggering people who maybe are back at the office or also going to be routed to take care of that issue. With the event itinerary, I will tell you this is one I use a ton because I manage events for my team, the OneDrive and SharePoint teams. But this is a great way to organize the entire event with who the speakers are, what are the descriptions and abstracts of each individual presentation, a collection on what room or what time they're going to be presented. But it's just a great way to get a quick start into managing that event. There's a lot, of course, beyond that, but the list will help you manage soup to nuts everything that you're doing for that event. And with the asset manager, this is where I think it really takes it to the real world. We have one customer that leverages the asset manager to manage 500 trucks. And as the different drivers of the trucks come in and out of the trucks each day or each week, they're managing that so they know which truck is being driven by which driver. And they're actually now starting to extend that with an additional column for devices. So they want to track devices that are assigned to trucks and drivers. So if you think about that, tracking physical assets and tracking the metadata or the fields of information around all of that. What's the location? What's the status? Who is the user? All of that you get with these templates. And to what I'll say in the next module is really focused then, how do you make that relevant? When it comes to drawing people in, there's a way to notify, but there's also the proactive way of sharing. And we now have the ability to share an entire list. And we also have the discrete way to share individual list items. So if you think about a row of data, you can share just that unique row as an asset to somebody so they can review just that row instead of having them share the entire list and be a little bit overwhelmed. So we're building this on top of the same sharing mechanism that's been in SharePoint and has been evolved greatly in the last few years, and that's now coming to lists. So if you share a whole list, you can share it in a certain way, whether you want somebody to view it or to be able to edit it. And the same with a list item. You can share that discretely and allow it to either be view or edit. And now we're starting to roll out that deeper level capabilities where you might want to share it with just the group where the list lives. You might want to make it available to anybody in the company. So if you have a public space in the context of your intranet, so that anybody can access it. And I do that where I manage a list for all of the events that we participate in. And that's a list that a lot of people take advantage of. So I have it in a discrete location, but I've made that public and I share it out in a way with a link that makes it available to the entire company. So there's a lot of great new capabilities in sharing. I will show all of this, but also if you've been leveraging how you share files, we want that to be a consistent experience. And to be frank, it is the same sharing control and mechanism. So it's great to hear about it, but it's even better to see it. We'll take time now to see it in action. We're going to look at the lists home and all you can do from there. We'll create a new list and we'll do it in a couple of ways, leveraging the different ways that you can get started quickly. And then we'll talk about sharing a list and list items. The best place to start to learn and to see Microsoft Lists in action is the new Microsoft Lists home, so that I can orient you where we are. If you go into the common app launcher for Office 365, I clicked on to the Lists app for Microsoft 365, which takes me to what we describe as Lists Home. And just to give you a quick setup of what this page offers, we'll go dig into the new list experience of where you would go to create a new list. But at the top here, you can have your favorites show up and be pinned at the top by just using the star. And if you highlight the star, it'll show up as a favorite. If you notice one down here that maybe isn't highlighted or filled in, then that's not up in my favorites. But then down below, beyond your favorites, is all of your recent lists. And we break those into your recent lists, the collection of all of the lists that you have created or engaged, and into the pivot of my list, what we call a Microsoft List personal list. And these are ones that you create that reside in your space in Microsoft 365. And so if you want to narrow down, you can do that with this pivot on the left here, either my lists or all lists, which includes your team's lists. And you can see it from either all recent or recent ones that I've created. So you can pivot down a few ways, mainly to look for the list that you're looking for. The obvious thing from here is it is a jumping point to go in and out of your various lists, not to have to go to the SharePoint site, go into site contents and find the list, but actually here front and center are all your lists. So I'm going to do that really quickly with just a few of the lists that I have up here in the favorites. I'm going to click into remote work and you'll see one example of a Microsoft list configured in the way that I want to help me manage this remote work. Imagine a team that's switching from working in the office to now working more remotely or working at home, or just a seasonality change. So they might have a checklist of what to do. That's what this list is all about. But to get from this one to another one, I go back to Microsoft Lists, and now I want to go in and see what the blog or the social calendar is for my product launch. So here's a content schedule, and I can see that it's designed a little bit differently. I want to see it in buckets based on the progress we've made. So you can see that I've already used the group by feature, some color formatting, and again, using the lists homepage, I can go from list to list, and again, the last list that I'll go into is this one that's configured with our gallery view. And for me, using lists home, and for you, it's a very easy way to navigate quickly from one list to the other, especially in the span of your day, working across multiple projects and multiple teams. You'll want to have that ease of getting into your information, and then most importantly, getting out. So what does it look like to create a list? If you've been using SharePoint lists for quite some time, some of the taxonomy of how I will describe this will sound similar, but there's a lot of new capabilities as well. So if I go in and click on New List, the standard ones that we've had for a while is to be able to create a blank list. You define your columns, you define your views and formatting, and you literally start from scratch. You can also bring in content from Excel. I'll show you what that looks like. And you can also start another list based on some of the choices that you made in another existing list, but instead of using a template or copying over data, you're actually just using the column structure and the formatting structure of a list that's already in use. So it's like you're copying the format of the list. Down below is the thing that's most new. You've got all of the new templates that Microsoft offers. And just around the corner is the ability for you to create your own custom list templates. So let me show you getting started with Excel. So I'm going to go in and choose an upload file, which is an Excel file, and I have it here on my desktop. And I want to bring it in and show you a spreadsheet, and then associated to that some images that I'll also bring in. So if I open this up within Microsoft Lists, it starts to break apart the Excel table, and it starts to try to understand what do these columns mean and what type of columns are they. So the device photo is something I'm going to do a little bit differently, so I'm going to actually choose not to import that column. Title is fine here. Status I know is going to be a choice field. And as I move to the right, I have a couple of choice fields because I have a limited set of how I describe these assets based on manufacturer, asset type, and the model. If I scroll over a little bit more, you'll see this one is listed as purchase date, and it did a good job of identifying it as a number, but it's actually a date and time, so I'm going to want to convert that properly so that the data comes intact and actually makes sense. This one was discovered as a number, but it's actually price, so we'll set it to currency, and this one is just the list of the owner, so we'll leave that. So when I click next, it's going to prompt me to fill in a name, and we'll just give this one assets for workshop. And if I want, I can add a description, choose a color, go in here, choose an icon. And this is where I mentioned I could create this and import that Excel table data in my list, just one that I own, and I only have access to it until I share it. But for this one, I know it's based on a group of people that I work with in a team space that's called freelance. So I'm going to actually create this new list from Excel into the freelance site, but visualized here through the list's new user interface. I don't need it on the site navigation, and I'll just click create. And what you'll see is a very blank list that starts from the data in Excel and gets moved into lists. And in 2 modules from now, I'll show you and describe how you can really add that layer of visual pop with formatting and adding some rules and using views. But if you see, the content landed intact, and now we have a new list that I can collaborate and use with my team members. Back to Microsoft Lists, so I can show you another scenario when you go to create a list, is this time I'm going to use a template. So I'm going to go in and use the event itinerary template, and I get a little peek ahead, title, description, and then the really nice thing what these templates will offer is a set of columns and a way of formatting that's really common to how people use these types of lists for events and event management, managing sessions, people, and whatnot, especially when you start to get to the actual event. So let's again retitle this and title it Event Workshop. And we'll choose a different color this time. And since we're in a workshop, we'll make it use the beaker icon. And this time I'm going to actually create it in my personal space. So I'll put it in my list and click create. So what you get here is fairly blank list, but it's already pre-populated with known columns for this type of scenario. And as I add new content, you can see that we already have a form that exists. If I give this a session name of workshop number 1 and a session code of 001, and because this is a workshop, you'll see that within the template, I already have these pre-configured choices. You can configure them if you'd like. I'll choose workshop. I'm not going to enter a description, but I'll make it so that my friend Patty is our speaker. And you can see I can do a global address lookup. And then we'll do this just to start. We'll put it on a Friday at 4 p.m., which is everybody's favorite time to do a workshop. And we'll set it at that same date and time, and we'll only make it an hour long, so we won't torture everybody before the weekend. So here, if I have a physical room, I could set capacity, I can add the location. You'll see that this is even pre-populated, mostly to trigger you to know that you can add whatever you want in here. And since we have a conference coming up from one of our third-party conference event leads, we'll meet them in Orlando. And with that, you can see I can start to fill in the form. I can add a list item. It's pretty straightforward. And everything that's there from the template is already helping me get started much more quickly. So you can see that some of the choice field colors come through. You can see that the look and feel with the columns is in there. And if I start to manage and maneuver around, this list would start to grow nicely as I collaborate with other people. So that's the main thing when I think of what I want to consume lists, go from list to list, or create a new list. The next thing I want to show you is sharing. I'll start first showing you how to share a list in its entirety, and I do that directly from Lists Home. And then I'll turn and show you what it looks like to share at the individual list item level. So since we were just working on something more like the event itinerary, I'm going to work on this content schedule list that's in the freelance team. And I want to share this. So I'm just going to go in, click the ellipses, click share. And now what I'm doing is I'm just initially granting access again to my friend Patty so that she is able to access this list. But instead of her either having the edit default capabilities or even granting her full control, I just want her to be able to view the list, but not necessarily be able to change anything. So that's one way of sharing, and in essence, I'm giving Patty full visibility to this whole list in a view perspective. So I grant access, and that's now going to send Patty an email. When she clicks on it, she'll have a nice view-only view of that information for content scheduling. If I go into the content schedule, and I'm already working with some folks here, but maybe I have a question, you can see that I have an indicator here that this item already has a comment or a conversation going. So that's one way of sharing. I'll show you that next. But to do it similar to what I just showed you for the whole list, I want to show you what it looks like just to share this row. So in essence, I'm giving the best visibility to whomever I connect with without having them to scroll through or view the entire list. I'm just asking them a very pointed question about a very specific list item. So here when I click share, similar experience where I'm granting them that access, and in this case I'll send it to my friend Alex. And in this case I'm going to be asking them to add new info. I might be asking them to fill out a field or to just contribute to more information to make it a more robust list item. So I want to grant him edit access. He's going to get an email, and I'm asking him to do a specific activity. When I click send, Alex gets an email with a link that actually takes him right to this experience where the form pops up. He can see everything that maybe I was asking him in my question, and then he can make those changes based on that share that I've granted him to. So another way to draw people in, though, is by conversation. And I will show you this in the context of within the list itself. When I click into this one, you'll see that there are already comments going here. And if I want, I can actually go in and add a new comment. Click this down, and off it goes. That's one scenario. I'm going to switch over. One thing I want to show you from a comment perspective is actually a real scenario for me where I was working in a meta point on this workshop when we were doing the live deliveries. So I was working with a number of people who were either going to co-present with me or just present in general a number of instances of this list workshop. So what I did, and I'll show you here again, is I went in and off of the comments, maybe I wanted to reach out to my peer, Michaela. I can mention Michaela. Are you sure you can present at this time? And then in this instance, since I'm demoing, I'll let her know. So when I click Submit Comment, Michaela's going to get an email with a link back to this list item with this context and can continue the conversation right here, all within the list itself. So there are app mentions that are coming soon to the broader scope of Microsoft Lists, but I hope that gives you an instance of what it's like to draw somebody in effectively to share a list item with the expectation of giving them some context along the way. So that's it. Just quick review. We saw Lists Home, creating new lists, sharing your lists, and working with comments to draw people in and collaborate. So now, in a sense of how to get started with Microsoft Lists, I just am going to do a quick summary before we move on. This video is useful to hand to other folks, but you really get a sense of the Lists Home experience is a great place to start a new list. You have a lot of different ways to get started with blank. You can bring in data from Excel, or you can use the smarts of another list. A lot of the value today is leveraging some of the new templates that we have, like this one, the Asset Manager. You get a glance ahead at what is available and what's the structure of your list once you create it. Creating a new list is very easy. Give it a name, choose a color, choose an icon, and then decide where do you want that list to live. Once you click Create, we're going to jump into adding one item where you add an image, fill out some fields, and ultimately what you're leading to is putting your information in the list. And the last thing you'll see once we've added this is what does it look like when you're in a run state. So this is a list that's in process, and there's a lot that you can do to be able to visualize this either as a row and columns, as a gallery, or as a calendar. So we like to have this video in here, and we make it available through some of the templates and some of the materials if you ever want to train other people on lists. This video is inclusive, and sometimes it's nice if you're not planning to do a full demo, you can provide this video inline, and it gives everybody a great sense just to get their sense of what you can do with Microsoft Lists when they're getting started. So it's also important to know, what does this all look like from a mobile perspective? We have a new Lists mobile app for iOS, and we're working on one later this year for Android. But it is really the full power of Microsoft Lists in your pocket. This is not a companion app. Everything I just showed you and more, you can do from mobile. You can access your recent and favorited lists. You can leverage the ready-made templates. That's what you see here running in the video. You can take your lists offline if you want to work with them when you're on the go. You can make adjustments. You can add edits and add items. You can easily share from your mobile device. And we support dark mode if you're using that at the operating system level. So you can grab this today from the App Store. If you follow this link on your phone, go to aka.ms/mslists/app/iOS, and it'll take you directly to the download in the App Store. And we'll have a same link hopefully very soon for you for later this year for Android. So let's talk about working with lists in Microsoft Teams. There is a new Lists app when you go to add a new tab in any channel. We call it the Lists app in Teams. And the create experience is very similar that I just showed you in the context of starting from the List homepage. So in this section, I want to focus on leveraging the new Lists app to create lists as new tabs and what happens on the back end, so you're very clear that when you create a list in Teams, it's technically stored in SharePoint, but the experience is from start to finish all within Microsoft Teams. If you have existing lists, we want to be really clear. You can bring those in just as well. It's the same Lists app that you use. And of course, with the chat mechanism, like a lot of capabilities in Teams, to have your content on the left and the conversation on the right, now is very true when you work at the individual list item level. You can hold a conversation with your team, leveraging the chat capabilities of Microsoft Teams with the value of managing your list information right side by side. When we think about it from what can I do with list, is it any different? That's a common question. The answer more and more is no. There are a few things that are still missing in the list experience, and a lot of that falls on leveraging the Power Platform. That's coming soon, and some of the capabilities around using rules, but that is also coming very soon. But I like to be very clear, when you're working with lists anywhere across Microsoft 365, our goal is to make that experience the same. And we're working on some of those gaps that are missing. The other thing I like to highlight is the work that the Teams team has done in the Teams mobile app also makes it so that if you've added a list as a tab in Teams. It looks and works great in web, but it also works great in the Teams mobile app. And if you've ever used the Teams mobile app, you go into a team and you can go in to see the available tabs per channel. If one of those tabs in a channel is a list, it'll look like what you see here on the mobile device on the left-hand side. Full fidelity of your list, easy to work with a lot of capabilities of how you would expect to work with the information on the go, even through the Teams mobile app. The nice thing here is there is already a Teams mobile app for iOS and Android, and those both now have that capability to work with your lists in a mobile fashion through the Teams mobile app. But still, lists are simple, lists are flexible, and there's a lot that you can do now in the user interface of Microsoft Teams, for which I want to show you. I want to show you the true love that Teams has for lists in how to get started and how to leverage that content and conversation side by side. These days, there is a lot that happens in Microsoft Teams. We manage our meetings, we manage our conversations. Of course, we can review our calendar, make calls. There's a lot that you can do. And with Microsoft Lists, there's even more in the sense of helping you track information in that context of your team. And by default, when you create, it's stored in the right location with the access to all of your team members already set by default. So just to put it into context, where I am here is I am in the freelance team on the general channel. And if you can see, the two default tabs that you have when you first create any team are the posts and the files. And of course, those are here intact and they're in good use. But what we want to focus on is leveraging Microsoft Lists inside of Teams. So I'm going to click into one of those lists that we've already talked about a little bit, and we'll talk about more in the context of how that then is experienced in Microsoft Teams. By default, it wants to prompt you to start a conversation, to start collaborating with your team. That's what you see over here on the right-hand side. Let me show you that in a second. First of all, just to orient yourself, this is a Devices tab, and behind it is a Microsoft list, technically stored in SharePoint. But here, for all users, you may have created this list, collaborated on this list, used it day in and day out, only from Teams, and that's really the design goal. But we often get questions on, well, where is this list stored? So I'll be real clear and I'll show you that in one instance. So this is a very functional list. This is tracking different devices. You can see based on availability, some things are happening with the formatting. If something's not available, it gets crossed out. I can see it in a really nice gallery view here. And as I scroll up and down, I just have a really nice experience of accessing this information. If there's any that I want to click into, and I see a nice form with all of the fields and all of the formatting that I have intact based on how I'm managing this information. And again, I'm here in Teams, and for the most part, I'm going to navigate between my conversations, working and collaborating on files, and referencing my devices, especially when different status changes. I can make those changes right in line. But to show you how to get started, that same create experience we're bringing inside of Microsoft Teams that I showed you from that list's homepage. When you go in to add any tab, you click the plus button, and you can see a plethora of all of the Microsoft apps, and as you scroll down, all the third-party apps that you can bring in as tab experiences. So up at the top here, you'll see where it says Lists. Just click that, and you'll get a couple of options after you save it as a new tab. You get the option to create new. That's what I'll show you first, and then I'll show you second how you can bring in lists that maybe you've just recently created or have been around in SharePoint for quite some time, and you've just recently connected that SharePoint team site to something like this in the freelance team as a new connected experience. With that, you get that ability to bring in existing lists into this new collaboration space within Teams. So if I go and create a new list, this should look familiar now from our original set of demos. You can see from blank, bring from Excel, start from an existing list. Or like I had showed you with the event itinerary, I'm going to go in with just a little bit of a different scenario and create a new asset manager list. And this is based on what I assume of physical assets. Doesn't have to be, but in this case, it shows you a glance ahead of different devices you might manage, and then it pre-populates all of these columns, same as you would expect with all of the other templates, to give you that jump start into what you're trying to accomplish. So here within Teams, I'm just going to put this in as Asset Workshop. Choose a color. This time we'll do orange, and we'll put it as a calendar item. So if I go in and click Create, if you notice, the one thing that's missing in this workflow to set this up is I don't actually choose where I want this list to go. It's going to make an assumption that because I'm working within the freelance team on the general channel, it's going to put this new list within that same container, that same connected SharePoint team site that is the backend to a lot of the content for this freelance team. So when I click create, it's just going to do that, and we'll get this new asset list that, as you saw me before, I can add a new item. Here I can upload a photo. So if I go into this images, I can choose the mouse. And if there's a strange number, I'll just type in anything. And you get the point from within this. This is a nice functional form that I can easily configure. You can enter a model number here. We'll put in surface. And as I go through and make choices, I am just easily clicking through drop down and adding new information. Last thing I'll do is I'll set a purchase date that we bought this back in May. Click save. And just as I showed you before, now you're adding a new list item into a new list that you just created. But let's get real clear on where this list now lives, and then I'll show you one additional capability within Teams. So just to prove to you where this list lives, if I go into the ellipsis, you'll see that I have the option to open in SharePoint. And what this is going to do is actually open it in SharePoint. It's the same list, it's the same data, it's not the duplicate of it, but it's really a proof point. When we say Microsoft lists are stored in SharePoint, this is the connected team site for that freelance team. And even to take a little bit further, if any of you out there know real value of the site contents page, I should be able to see that new list, Asset Workshop. It currently has one item, and it is a real asset of this team site. But again, if you go through that Microsoft Teams, you'll see it's really just an entry point to that same list. So it's really great to have the SharePoint platform on the back end. It's where things are stored and managed, but ultimately where the collaboration happens is directly inside of Teams from start to finish. The last thing I want to show you in the context of Teams is, let's say I now am working on a list in an ongoing fashion. This is where I want to add comments because I'm already working with a set of people in my team. And on this particular work asset item, I want to go in and have a Teams conversation. So if I go up in the upper right, click on conversation, similar to how I could @mention somebody here, I will @mention my friend Alex and see if you can add the right asset tag. And then I'll fire that off. And instead of an email, here, because we're in the context of Teams, Alex would get a notification in his activity app that would then have a link into this particular list item that would take him right here to be able to review the item, side by side the conversation, reply back to me with whatever comment he has or any open questions he might still have. And in that way, we connect the conversation with the content in the context of where we are already collaborating. So I get a lot of value in where I create the list, or if other people are creating the list, it's really easy to then draw in your team members to give them that sense of making progress, tracking that information. The last thing I want to show you is, because we know that a lot of lists exist from many, many years ago, I can use that same list app to bring in an existing list. So if I go in and save this as a new tab, and instead of creating a list, I want to add an existing list. So here, whatever lists are available in this SharePoint team site, that site contents page we were just on, I can go in and here is that devices list listed here as an option, but I already have that as a tab. So I want to go in and bring in one of their content schedule list. So when I choose an existing list, that's it. From there, I just am basically adding the window into this information as it existed. And this list possibly has existed for years, maybe let's say 5 years before even Teams existed. But the value of what carries through the SharePoint platform, we've updated that. Lists have gotten a lot of new capabilities, inclusive of now being able to work with lists inside of Teams in its full fidelity. So this is that same list, even if it's been around for 5 or 10 years, because we know SharePoint lists have been there for quite some time. But now, in the context of working with my team, we now have access to our devices list, our content schedule list, and any other thing that we're collaborating on. And in this instance, you can see that this list has been configured so that we can manage our content and have visibility into what's going on. For instance, and I'll show you in the next module what it looks like to configure some of these things. But in this list, I can clearly see I have one item that's published, and I can see the status of everything else. So off of that, I might look into and say, is this ready to publish? When do you want to publish it to work to a final date? And I could do that all here within Teams and be connected with my team members. And they are connected not with just my question, but with the content that I'm asking around. So there's a lot that you can do with lists inside of Teams. A lot of that I'm going to show you in the next module, just in the context of configuring your list. But know that when you do anything with a list, whether it's basic or more complex, when you bring it into Teams, you add that layer of collaboration that's very deeply connected to the content itself. So quick review, what does this all look like in Teams? Again, if you want to share with other people, it's super easy to go to use the Lists app in Teams as you would with any tab in any channel in Microsoft Teams. You go in to create a new list. You'll see that the Getting Started experience is the same. You have access to use one of the templates or create from blank. When you use the templates, give it a name, add a description, choose a color and an icon. And the real value here that I mentioned before is when you create a list in Teams, it's already stored in the right place for that team. And then again, there's the value of managing the list and information and mentioning other people to draw them in. And this conversation, again, is private to the team because it is the Teams chat for that channel. So Microsoft Teams plus Microsoft Lists is a great way to track and manage information in a collaborative way. And again, I hope that this video is something that if it's useful, we make available so that you can share that and demo it with other people in your company to spread the information. One of the common questions we get specifically around lists and Teams is what can I do? And I mentioned a few things that were deltas or gaps that we're working on, but this takes a reverse approach to that. It really shows you, if you read this entire list, which I'm not going to do, I'll leave it up here for a little bit, but it really is everything that we build into the list product carries through to working with information if it's a list in Teams. On the right-hand side, you can see exactly what the experience is in a richer way of working through the Teams mobile app, navigating to the list, navigating to an individual list item, and either making changes or sharing it with somebody else. So there's a lot that's available today. There's a lot more coming that we have on the roadmap specifically to list features coming to Teams. But again, I want to leave you with one last thought that everything that we do for lists, wherever you access that list from, we want to make sure that you have the same experience, the same rich capabilities, and in the near future, we will have near parity across any entry point in how you work with lists. So that wraps us up with this module number 1. I want to leave you with just a few things from a resources perspective. Where can I go learn more? And specific to lists and Teams, there's both admin documentation and end user help documentation. We have a list resource center that has all of our blogs, demos, videos, specific podcasts that we've created. If you just go to aka.ms/mslist, that's the jumping point to learn all that you can about lists and Teams, and all the functionality from specific actions and tasks you might do with Teams. We also publish everything on a regular cadence to the Microsoft 365 public roadmap. There's a short link here that will take you directly to that. Once you're at the public roadmap, just type in Microsoft Lists and you'll see all the items that we have that are coming in the future. And we also publish a lot of ongoing information. So far, we already have 3 episodes on the Interzone specifically about Microsoft Lists. So we regularly publish 2 to 3 episodes per month and oftentimes bring in the list team or work with customers to understand what they're doing with lists. So we encourage you to check out the Interzone. It's our way of having an ongoing conversation throughout the year with the community, specifically with what we're doing and feedback that we're getting on topics that you would like us to cover. Once again, I'm Mark Cashman, Senior Product Manager on the Microsoft Lists team here at Microsoft. Thank you for joining Part 1. I encourage you to jump directly into Part 2 if you've got time, or flag some time for later. With Part 2, we really jump into how to make a list work for you. We take it into that richer level of customization, working with row formatting, working with forms, and working with rules. So there's a lot to learn in Part 2. Part 1 is just getting you ready for Part 2. Thank you for your time, and I hope to catch you in Part 2.